Welcome back to CIS Business Intelligence, the online class, and this is slide group 3-2. In this short set of slides, I'm going to introduce a key business intelligence concept that you'll need to understand both for BI as well as for the underlying data warehouses that we'll talk about in some of our slides coming up. And specifically, that's the concept of dimensionality. So you might be wondering, what is dimensionality? It's, in general, a critical capability that is what we use to separate business intelligence from what you might call plain old reports. So companies have been producing and government agencies have been producing reports for years, long before computers ever showed up on the scene. Even after computers showed up, so many reports, if you've ever seen an old movie where people are looking at these very, very large stacks of what we used to call green bar paper, the very large paper that came off of computer printers with alternating green and white stripes, and they have this stack of paper in front of them that might be, a foot tall or maybe even 2 feet tall. That's your typical plain old report, and there's plenty of smaller scale versions of that show up and have shown up for years and still do show up on people's computer screens. But if we want to talk about business intelligence as opposed to plain old reports, dimensionality is one of those critical capabilities that started showing up in the earliest versions of OLAP, Online Analytical Processing. And again, you may remember that's around the 1990-91 time frame. And it's dimensionality that enables us to look at data on a screen, or as we'll talk about later in the class, on a mobile device. And it enables us to drill up and drill down, so go to a lower level of abstraction or maybe a higher level of abstraction, but to do so without having to run and rewrite a brand new report. So this concept of, and you may hear the term slicing and dicing of data, which is less technical than drilling up or drilling down, but basically it means the ability to look at data in a number of different views at a number of different levels, all without having to write a report over and over and over again with a slight variation from the last time you wrote that report. So that's the concept of dimensionality. Now here's the easy way to remember it. One simple 2-letter word, BY, B-Y. Now let's look at a retail example. So far in this class we've talked about BI in retail. We've talked about BI in banking and also BI in government in our previous set of slides. Let's look at some examples of dimensionality in each of those industries. So let's start with retail. Assume that we all work for a national pet food and supply chain, so retail stores that sell pet food, dog toys, cat toys, you name it. And what we're focused on are BI capabilities for sales. So not just simple sales reports that show totals, these are the types of things that we want to see. For example, tell me the total of gross sales by quarter, by product category, and by region. All three of those together. So what you would do then is, and we'll look at an example of this coming up in a future set of slides when we walk through an entire case study of how to build a BI system. On your screen right there, you would see one particular number of the total of gross sales broken down by quarter, by product category, and by region. So you'd have your total, but then for each quarter, for each product category, for each region, the combination of those, you would get what the gross sales were for for region 1, for dog toys, and for Q4 of last year. Then you see another category for dog food, for Q1 of last year, and for another region, region 2 within the company. So basically you're taking your data and you're breaking it down by these different categories. Now here's where dimensionality is really powerful. You can do what's called drilling down, as I mentioned on the previous slide, where let's go to a lower level of detail. So we still want to see the total of gross sales, but instead of by quarter, we want to see it by month. Instead of by product category, we want to see it by actual product. And again, instead of by region, let's look at these gross sales by each of our stores. So we take the levels of detail for the data we're looking at, and we drill down into lower levels. But we're still dealing with dimensionality. We still have that word by in there for each of those. We're just working at a different level of detail for each of our buys than we were previously. Let's look at an example in banking. So remember in our set of slides about banking and BI, we mentioned that most banks have multiple lines of businesses or LOBs. So we want to look at the BI capabilities to track new customer accounts that are opened. So here's a good type of analytic we might want to run. Tell me the total number of new customer accounts that were opened by quarter, by financial product category, so checking, deposit accounts like savings or CDs, loan-related accounts like a mortgage or a credit card. We also want to look at how many were done online versus people actually walking into a branch. So again, that same word by shows up, and we're looking at a specific set of information by, in this case, quarter, financial product category, and then the online versus in branch. And just like in our retail example, we can drill down to a lower level of detail. So we ask the same exact question. Tell me the total number of new customer accounts opened, but now we want to look at by month instead of by quarter, and we could drill that down to by week, by day. We could drill it down to in the last hour. Just it doesn't matter the level of abstraction, the level of decomposition, as long as we have the data, it's how we group it, and we're still using the word by. Same thing for the financial product category. We want to look at specific financial products. So checking account type 1, checking account type 2 that pays interest, checking account type 3 that doesn't have fees if you have a minimum balance that you maintain, whatever it is, and any number of deposit accounts and any number of credit cards and mortgages and private loan accounts. Whatever it is, we want to look at the details of all of our financial products. And then here's an interesting one. In our first example, it was just by online versus in branch. Let's look at it by specific web pages, because we have a whole bunch of web pages on our bank's website that allow people to open accounts. Let's look at which specific web pages are the ones that actually prompted them to do that, or if they were in branch and did this, who were the actual tellers, if indeed they were tellers, or maybe some other employee in the bank who actually was responsible for helping the customer open that account. So maybe that's an interesting report. But again, the key point is that word by is showing up over and over. Now, each of our examples, had 3 dimensions. You're not limited to 3 dimensions. Literally, you could have dozens on any given report, any given analytic. It's very common to have time. It's very common to have geography, customer hierarchy, product hierarchy, and we'll talk a little bit about those as we go through some of our examples. And the other point that, again, don't worry about this for now, but I just wanted to introduce the concept. Within the data warehouse that we build, the one that we'll bring the data in from our different source systems, as I've showed you in a number of different diagrams, there are special database design techniques that we use to represent the dimensions and represent these other things that we'll call facts. So this concept of by, it's a very important concept. We also do certain things in the database that we run our data warehouse on to represent that. So stay tuned for that.